Hi everyone, I hope you're all keeping well, staying home, and staying safe. Now, this is a presentation on the TOEFL exam, which, as you probably know, stands for the test of English as a foreign language. This exam is accepted worldwide at undergraduate and graduate schools all over the world, and especially in US institutions, which is why we are doing this presentation. This presentation is meant to give you a quick overview on the structure of the TOEFL exam, the various sections of the exam, and some of the questions that are fielded in the sections of the exam. Now, first things first, let's talk about who can take the TOEFL exam. Well, anybody. There are no age and qualifications restrictions to appearing in this exam. So you can even take it before you've graduated high school or before you've gotten your college diploma. Now, when can you take the TOEFL? Well, anytime in the year. You just have to make sure that you register well in advance. How often can you appear? Well, as many times as you want. The only restriction is that it has to be once in a 3-day period. Now, TOEFL is also a requirement for once you're shortlisted for the Fulbright scholarship. The GRE is something that you have to submit with your Fulbright application, and the TOEFL is required once you're shortlisted. You can always also, of course, give it beforehand if you're confident of getting a good score, and if you have a good score, that only serves to strengthen your application. Now, the cost of the exam is $195 in Pakistan, which is around 30,000 rupees. So that's a good amount of money. And so you want to make sure that every attempt you give is your best attempt, right? So the scores, how is the TOEFL scored? Well, it's scored on a scale of 0 to 120 points. There are 4 sections: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And they're each scored from 0 to 30. These 4 scaled scores from these 4 sections are then added together to determine your total score. Now, one of the most frequently asked questions: what is the score requirement? What's the cutoff? What's the score I need to get in this institution or in this program? Now, of course, this question is very relative. A high score definitely helps your application. So, of course, your aim should be to do your best and get the highest score possible. But if you're aiming for a particular program, a particular institution, you can definitely go to their website, check out their program, and they usually have a cutoff TOEFL score, just like they have a cutoff GPA requirement. So there is no pass or fail TOEFL score, and individual colleges and universities will have their own score requirements. So applications below that cutoff are not considered. So sometimes you can actually be rejected just for having a very low TOEFL score or a lower TOEFL score than their cutoff. Now, a good score, well, most good programs have a minimum score requirement of 100 plus. And these scores are valid for 2 years. So you want to make sure that you take your exam and you time it less than 2 years before you're actually going to submit your application. Now, before we discuss each of the sections in detail, let's talk a little bit about the sequence of these sections. The reading and the listening sections are tested first. This takes a total of around 2 hours, a little less than that, and this is followed by a 10-minute break. After the break, you have the speaking and the writing sections. Now, you'll notice that the number of minutes in listening and reading are quite variable. This is because your test may include extra questions in the reading or the listening section. These do not count towards your score, so they are experimental sections, which ETS sometimes introduces to test their new questions in actual standardized testing conditions. and you can either get them in the reading section or the listening section, but you won't know which one is the experimental. And after the break, the speaking and the writing section, which are both sections graded by human graders, a number of human graders, unlike the reading and the listening section, which are auto graded. The speaking section is the shortest section. It has 4 tasks that you have to complete. We're going to discuss each of the sections in detail, so I'm going to talk about what 4 tasks you get. The last is the writing section, and it has 2 tasks, 50 minutes in total, 2 writing tasks, one 20-minute and the second one for 30 minutes. Now let's look at the first section, the reading section. It will have 3 or 4 passages, approximately 700 words each, and about 9 or 10 questions. Now the topics will be extremely variable and probably on something you would have never heard about. I remember I got a topic on volcanoes. The topics sometimes that appear are on very current topics, such as fossil fuels, but they can be on anything as wide-ranging as zoology, meteorology, virology, the environment, literature, Greek tragedy, botany, anything you could hear as a lecture in an undergraduate campus. Now, you could have either 3 passages or 4 passages. So it's very critical that you read the timing instructions for the reading section carefully, because they will indicate how many passages you will receive and the amount of time you have to respond to questions for those passages. This will allow you to time yourself. Now, this is just a rough guide on how you could time yourself. If there are 4 passages, you get 72 minutes, and if there are 3 passages, you get 54 minutes. That means about 18 minutes per passage, and perhaps 1.8 minutes per question, because there are around 10 questions for every passage. Now, this is a very rough guide, because not all passages will be equally difficult, and not all questions will be equally difficult. But this is just a rough guide you could use to pace yourself to make sure you don't run out of time. Most questions are 1 point each, but the last question will usually carry 2 points. It's also critical to remember that you can skip questions and you can return to them later if you want. Now, this is an example of a reading passage that you will get. This is taken from the free practice test available on the ETS website. The link is given. This is followed by 9 or 10 questions. Now, the questions that follow, I've attached some for you to review. So you can pause this on your own time and actually solve this question. The answer key is available on the ETS website. So one thing I want to point out is that the questions are all in chronological order. So for example, if you notice question 1 and 2, they both concern paragraph 1. Question 3 concerns paragraph 2. And 4 and 5 are basically about 2 words that are found in the passage. Those words are highlighted as well. So you won't have to waste a lot of time finding the paragraphs. The paragraphs are numbered. The words that are also questioned about are also highlighted. One other thing is that during the exam, the questions and the text are side by side. So you won't have to go back and forth trying to find the answer, going back to the text and then returning to the question. So this saves you a lot of time. Now the next section is the listening section. The listening section aims to measure your ability to comprehend conversations and lectures in English. The listening section is divided into 2 or 3 separately timed parts. In each part, you will listen to 1 conversation and 1 or 2 lectures. It's important to remember that you will hear each conversation and lecture only once. Then you will be given some questions about it. So sometimes the question will be about what the speaker or narrator has openly stated, or it could be something that they have stated implicitly or indirectly. So it's really crucial you take notes and understand the overall gist of the conversation. Now, here's an example listening practice available on the ETS website. You can see it's a good 4 minutes and 36 seconds long clip. And well, this can be quite challenging for people with short concentration spans because once you hear the passage, you're not able to hear it again. So it's a good idea, like I mentioned, to take notes of all the important points. So you have an easy time answering the questions. Okay, so time for the break, the 10-minute break. And there's some new vocabulary for our break. So yeah, very relevant to these days. Do you know somebody who is a COVID yet? All right, so well, during the exam, make the most of this 10-minute break. It's time to relax yourself, to brace yourself for the next two sections, which are also not easy and require a lot of concentration. All right, so the speaking section. It's a fairly short section, less than 20 minutes. However, it requires a lot of quick thinking and instant extempore speaking, as you'll only have about 15 to 30 seconds to prepare a response. Now, there will be 4 questions, and the purpose of this section is to demonstrate your ability to speak in a clear, in clear and coherent English. Now, the first question is about a familiar topic. And question 2 and 3 are about a conversation on the campus. Now, it could be perhaps about an admissions procedure, someone trying to get a dormitory room, a class lecture, anything. You either read or hear the conversation. The text and, of course, the recording will disappear, and it will be followed by a question prompt. There will be a clock to tell you how much time you have to prepare, and then you'll have time to record your response. Now, responses should be planned adequately, otherwise you risk running out of time or even running out of words to say. Now, the fourth question is on a lecture or an academic topic, and you're asked to summarize the main points. Now, let's look at an example of each types of these questions. Now, the first one is the one on a familiar topic. Now, there are lists of topics that are often repeated in the TOEFL exam, so it's a good idea to develop sample responses on those topics. And one of the very common topics is the one on distance education, online instruction, etc. So this one also asks you to discuss whether you disagree or agree with the following statement, that learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting. You have 15 seconds rather to prepare a response and 45 seconds to record your response. These are examples taken from the free practice test available on the ETS website, which is your go-to resource for preparation for the TOEFL. Example responses are also given over there, and they're also kind of graded, so you can know if it's a high level, mid level, poor response. And the rubrics are also given, so you can actually review, and you can, while you're practicing as well, you can also grade yourself. A good idea is to record your response in a mic, and then listen to it and then grade it. Or you can do it with a friend or a peer, or with someone who you're preparing the TOEFL with. Now, this is an example of the second type of question that you get, which involves both a reading and a recording. The first part is reading. Perhaps this could be it is in this case an excerpt from the campus newspaper. This is followed by a recording. In this case, the transcript of that recording is given. However, that is not the case in the actual exam. You actually just hear the recording. And then you have a few seconds to answer the question, to record your response right? So 30 seconds of preparation time in this case and 60 seconds. So this was basically a conversation between two students about a newspaper excerpt from the campus newspaper on whether to ban bicycles. So the female student argues that because the accidents that happened, which is why the university wishes to ban the bicycles, are happening because they only happen due to low visibility at night. And you have to state her opinion and then explain the reasons that she gives for holding that opinion. 2 and 3, these are the type of questions that you get. You'll either read or hear the conversation, or you'll have both, and then you have some time to prepare your response and to record your response. So this is the final, the fourth question, which asks you to summarize the main points of either a reading or a recording. In this case, this is a recording. However, the transcript of that recording is given. This is from the ETS website. However, if there's a recording, the transcript of that recording is not given in an actual exam. And then this is basically part of a lecture in a business class on discussion on what reliability is. And then you are asked to basically summarize the main points. In this case, explain the two major factors of product quality and how their role in consumer decision making has changed. So again, if you weren't taking notes, this would be very difficult to answer, very difficult to articulate. So it's good to take notes, and then this will help you in preparing your response and of course articulating your response. So finally, the writing section. The writing section aims to gauge your ability to communicate in English in an academic environment. There are two writing tasks. The first one is based on either a passage that you will read or a lecture that you will hear. And you will have to write an essay. This is a smaller essay compared to the second writing task. And you have to summarize or answer a particular question about what you've read or heard. This is all in 20 minutes and preferably within 150 to 225 words, which is basically one paragraph. So you have 20 minutes to basically write your response. The time to hear or read your response is separate from that. And so let's look at an example of the first writing task. Now this passage is about an author who wrote his memoir and who made some very tall claims, which historians have sought to disprove about in his memoir. And the question that follows is basically asking you to summarize the main points being made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they respond to the specific points made in the recent passage. And you have 20 minutes to plan, write, and revise your essay. So it's basically only a paragraph, not a lot of words, so you have to be very wise with your words. You don't want to write too many words, and because you won't have time, frankly, and you want to make sure you stick to the topic and you complete the requirements of the task. So let's look at an example of the second writing task, which is known as the independent writing task. Here you will write based on your prior knowledge. It's a longer essay and you're asked to write a minimum of 300 words. And it's also, you also have 30 minutes to plan, write, and revise your essay. So this is also an example from the practice test. You're asked to write whether you disagree or agree with the following statement: that it is more important for students to understand ideas and concepts than it is for them to learn facts. Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. Now, especially if you've also if you've taken the GRE, I find the writing task, the second writing task of the TOEFL very similar to the analytical essay in the GRE. So especially if you've already practiced for the GRE, you won't have much difficulty in the second writing task. Now, if you look at the rubrics of the speaking and the writing section, both available at the ETS website, you'll notice that the speaking section is scored from 0 to 4, and the writing section is scored from 0 to 5. Now, what happens is that initially each speaking section is given a raw score of 0 to 4 with a 1 point increment possible. Similarly, the writing section is given a raw score of 0 to 5 with 0.5 increments. And then both these raw scores are then converted to scaled scores of 0 to 30. That's why you see both your speaking and your writing scores on a scale of 0 to 30. This marks the end of the presentation. Now, if you want any more details or if you'd like to register for the TOEFL, this is the website. You can access the website and contact any of the numbers for the Karachi and the Islamabad office. If you have any more questions, you can definitely leave your comments below. Thank you.